Hello, I'm Nan Simonson, and it is July 4th. In the middle of the afternoon, I'll be leaving this room to put together a big pot. It's actually a 9 by 13 thick, deep casserole dish with handles of baked beans, vegan baked beans, um, and going to a get together tonight on a hill overlooking, I don't know, 30, 40 miles in, um, I was going to say most directions, probably a 200-degree view, 250 view of fireworks. And then we're heading out for a holiday. But I put together some interesting thoughts. I think they're interesting, and I thought I would share them with you because I won't be doing my typical Facebook Live on Tuesday or Wednesday. It's Monday, July 4th. And I thought I'd share a few things that I thought were noteworthy. First of all, what exactly does the 4th of July represent in a nutshell from history.com? On July 4th, the Continental Congress formally adopted the Declaration of Independence, which had been written largely by Thomas Jefferson, though the vote actually took place on July 2nd for independence. From then on the 4th, that became the day that was celebrated as the birth of the American independence, or of our American independence. Good story. There are songs about that. We'll hear songs tonight as the fireworks go off. God bless America, and yeah, I love this country. I'm very glad I'm a part of it. And something else came to me while I was reading last night, before I even thought of any of this. I was reading something I'd mentioned in another podcast, the yamas and niyamas, exploring yoga's ethical practice, because yoga isn't just about movement. It's not just about breathing. It's about almost 4,000 years of written information from the sutras that were transformed and translated from Sanskrit. And this woman, do you know Deborah Dell? Do you know of her? I didn't until I said to somebody, I spent a month, 4 months after my husband passed away, a husband of 40 years passed. I spent a month living in a yoga center in the middle of Mumbai, India, to learn yoga. And I received a teacher certification for that because it was, I don't know, about 160 hours, but I never intended to teach with it. Well, here it is 12 years later, and I want that information back. So I called, having asked for referrals, a woman who not only teaches yoga but goes back to India a couple of times a year to strengthen her own understanding of the Yoga Sutras, of the practice of yoga, not just the physical practice, but the mental practice. And she recommended this book, The Yamas and Niyamas. She said, if you're getting back some of what you learned, my guess is if you were in India, it wasn't about the asanas. And we only learned 34 asanas, which are the movements. We learned the philosophy. I have notebooks of it, but I couldn't put it together, even going back and reading it again. And she said, this will be a help. And as I was reading this, and it was written by Deborah Adele, something came to me last night while I was reading, and I thought, this is something I can share, and we may want to think about collectively, because it applies and has to do with all of us in this country. I recently saw, and this is her writing, I recently saw a play, Handing Down the Names was the play, by Stephen Dietz. It's the story of, and I believe she wrote this book about 8 years ago. It's the story of 200 years of German ancestors, beginning with those who left the German states to become farmers around the Volga or along the Volga River in Russia, eventually immigrating to America. The story is profound in its ability to show the strength of a people and their love and hope for future generations. As Dietz states, she writes this in her book, as Dietz states, my ancestors picked sugar beets, and again, Dietz is the one who wrote the play. My ancestors picked sugar beets for generations, so that now in 1995, when the play was produced, I can pick words and tell stories. I loved that. I'm going to read just a little more of this. I left the play with intense emotion. My ancestors sacrificed so much for me. They endured hardships beyond my comprehension with only one thought, that of the upcoming generations. They literally gave their lives to create beauty on the earth and better times for the future. In that moment, I realized the incredible love that my life stands on. Remembering our ancestors and the mystery that brought us into being is a way to reframe the sacredness of our own lives and the sacredness of the lives that will come after us. It is to find ourselves as current caretakers in this lineage of past and future lives. It is to find ourselves with the direction pointed to those who will come after us. Now, what does that have to do with yamas and niyamas? Well, one of the yamas of yoga is asteya, which is non-stealing. There's ahimsa, which is non-violence, and satya, which is truthfulness. And all of these are taken beyond the obvious. As she's referring in this chapter to stealing, she's referring to stealing from others. How in one generation we can make decisions that will steal a large part of the future of the next generation, and how that was never the way our country began. It began quite differently. I then thought of my own lineage. I'm Italian, and in the 1940s, there wasn't anybody in this country that had my blood. They began coming in the 1940s. This is an old photo of my grandmother's parents. That's the Slate family. And some of their children, they continued to have babies. And this one right here is my grandmother. So she is my mother's mother. In 1945, my father came as a 22, 23-year-old to this country. He met my mother, so the little girl had gone on to have her own children, and one of them was my mother, one of 4 girls, and they married. So that's how I came to be in this country, as late as the 1940s. In 1941, the federal, there was a federal law that brought into practice the celebration of the 4th of July. What's interesting about that is I'm in a historic home here in Riverside. Well, if I was on the East Coast, historic homes are made in the 1700s and the 1800s. In this area, probably our oldest home is 1888. So this one is 1941 in an area called the Wood Streets, little few blocks of historic homes. This one was built in 1941, the year that the 4th of July was made a federal holiday. And I'm so glad it was. So we're all, most of us, not the American Indians, but most of us are immigrants in this land. And it is our imperative to look at this land, look at the health of it, look at where it's going, but also look at our health as it relates to where future generations are going to be taken. And this is where I get in. This is where I start feeling the energy to say a thing and make a difference. I was listening to, while I was walking up our local mountain this morning, I was listening to Rich Roll, who is somebody that I recognize as being a not only leader in the plant-based movement, and I have been whole food plant-based going on 4 years now, but a thought leader. He has a podcast, the Rich Roll podcast, and he interviews people on a number of subjects, people who show strength and purpose and ability and have something to share with the rest of us, so that again, we in this generation have something to share with each other and then to pass on. He was interviewing, and it was a 5-day it was an interview that he recorded 5 days ago, so I knew it was a newer interview than I heard 4 years ago, with Dr. Walter Longo. Interestingly enough, Walter Longo is one of the world-renowned experts on longevity. He wrote The Longevity Diet. He talks about the science and proven scientific research that can direct our activity to actually give us more years on this earth, but more good years on the earth. And a lot of them have to do with what I believe is, no, I don't believe it, what I believe as a lifestyle medical coach, and that is that the pillars of health, as espoused by the College of Lifestyle Medicine, have nailed it. This is a book I wrote, Aging Powerfully. I began with Lifestyle Medical in January of 2019, and I wrote this book in the end of at the end of 2019. It was published in time for January 9th, 2020, which was my 70th birthday, and that was the point. Here I am, 70, and instead of looking at the beginning of the end, I'm looking at this and sharing with others the 10 ways, aging powerfully, an acronym, 10 modalities to adopt that will lead to longer, healthier, happier life that we can pass on to others. And so I believe very strongly in the pillars of lifestyle medicine. I was then hired, well, not then, it's been almost 4 years, by Lifestyle Medical and Dr. Wayne Dysinger, who is a founding member of the College of Lifestyle Medicine, that began with 100 members and now has thousands and thousands and thousands of qualifying doctors every year who are then board certified to help others to use lifestyle as medicine, not pills, not procedures. And this is what Rich Roll and Walter Longo were talking about. They were talking about the pillars of lifestyle that can make a difference, some of which include fasting, and he talks about that in their interview. And the name of the interview is it's Fasting for Longevity, and it's Rich Roll and Dr. Longo. And he talks about the different ways of fasting and what that can do, but he also talks about how criminal he thinks it is, criminal, that our government, our food manufacturers, and our medical establishment have created a bond among them that has kept us so sick because it's financially beneficial. They are building institutes of treatment that basically don't change the trajectory of a disease. They simply treat the symptoms of it with medications and procedures, as opposed to the simple decisions that we can make to give ourselves freedom. I'm going to use the word that is so popular on the 4th of July, freedom from illnesses, 80% of which need never have occurred if we understood that we have the ability. And Dr. Longo's talk with Rich Roll, a 2-hour conversation that they had, just brought it home to me again. And that is that by avoiding the things that make us sick, processed foods, fast foods, overindulgence in refined sugars, in avoidance of carbohydrates, as opposed to running toward the whole food, whole grain, legume, grains, vegetables, fruits, seeds, and nuts, which make us healthy. Promotion has told us, and manufacturers, that we want to stay away from those carbohydrates and eat whatever it is they make for us that they can make money from, be it protein shakes, be it keto, be it paleo, any combination. It could be any diet that promotes whole natural foods to the exclusion of processed foods is going to keep us healthier longer, even if they include some dairy, even if they include some egg, even if they include some meat. I chose not to have any of that, and Dr. Longo even stated reasons why. The primarily whole food, plant-based grains and legumes and seeds and nuts and vegetables and fruits way to go is and has been shown worldwide, hands down, meta-analysis, new information all the time, to be the way that we can live longer, help others do the same thing, and give back to our generations rather than sucking out the air from what we've created from such a start in 1776 to now, where 80% of our population is sick because of lifestyle choices, and those choices are promoted to us all around us. And then I also listened to a podcast, see, this is coming from interesting places, of Chef AJ, who is well, she is an icon in the whole food plant-based realm, and she takes it to the degree that she came to understand when she, even as a vegan, was 50 pounds overweight because she was eating the processed vegan foods and eating as if she was eating the standard American diet, but just not eating the animal products. And she was much larger than health would continue to sustain. And she knew she had to change something. She did it for 10 years. She has been completely free of the addictions that she had with food. And she had that conversation, that kind of conversation, with Jamie Morgan. So you may be looking for Chef AJ. It was just 2 days ago, July 2nd, when she had the interview. Chef AJ and Jamie Morgan, and the name of the podcast is Such a Pretty Face. The point being that Jamie Morgan, from the time she was a little kid, was obese and kept getting larger and larger. And people would say to her, and she really does have a very pretty face, and people would say to her, you have such a pretty face, if only you would. And then there was the rest of it. And she's writing a book about this. What does she have to say? Well, for 15 years now, as of January, the end of January 2008, she has been 100% whole food, plant-based. And she has lost 250 pounds, more than 250 pounds. She was over 400 pounds. And when you look at this woman, and she's kept it off for 15 years, no surgeries. So she had no lap band, nothing other than making dietary choices, but also coming to realize that there really is such a thing as an eating, a food addiction. And that addiction is all around. And I may be speaking to people with deaf ears on this subject, but I'll tell you from my own experience that it's real. Because when I think of freedom, and this is why I decided to do this podcast, freedom to me means a freedom from addictive behavior an obsession, because for almost 55 years, I was obsessed by, addicted to, and unable to break a cycle of an eating disorder that affected every area of my life. Somehow, I was able to manage avoiding some of the most um, lethal consequences of a life living with bulimia. But by the same token, and I've talked about this before, so I'm not going to go on about it, but it did affect every area of my life. It's 4 years now that I have been completely free, as was described in the conversation with Jamie Morgan and Chef AJ. And Jamie was saying, no, I am completely free. Chef AJ said, do you fear gaining that weight back? Because most people who lose a lot of weight gain it right back. And she said, no, I'm not, because I am staying away from those things that caught me up in addictive behavior. And see, so do I. I had a conversation with our Dr. Dysinger, the doctor with whom I'm a health coach in his practice. And he said to me something like, and Tim and I were both on a podcast with him. We were actually talking to him about the COVID we had both gotten. I got it and gave it to Tim, but we're both fine. And he said, you know, Nan, you are one of the most strict people. He says, actually, he used the word perfect. He said, you do whole food, plant-based, more perfect than most people or anybody I know. Well, one of the reasons is that I can look back and think back to what it was like to be at somebody's home, get caught up with the addictive situation, whatever it was, whatever they were serving, whatever triggered me. And I could, because I was small, I could get away with it. But that's what happens when you're bulimic. People don't guess what you're doing. But does it mean that you get away with it really? No. That means you carry a secret with you that can absolutely ruin your life and your self-esteem and your ability to move beyond it and to realize your own value as a human being. When I realized that the foods that were manufactured to set me off, and that's the whole food system in America. I don't mean whole foods system. I mean the entire food system in America, where most of our foods are manufactured with attention to the amount of oil, sugar, and fat put into everything from French fries to hamburger buns to even the vegan meats that are just as manufactured as a hot dog that has meat in it. That's why I don't even do those manufactured foods. But that doesn't mean you can't, because not everyone has the same sensitivity. But a lot of people do. When they find they can't stop eating and they feel owned by their eating behavior, they may want to look at the possibility that refined foods and your attraction to these foods that, again, light up your dopamine centers and can take control of your actions, have you basically behaviorally enslaved. I'm not, because I simply don't eat that way anymore. I simply don't. And yep, Dr. Dysinger, I eat almost perfectly whole food, plant-based, and stay away from refined and manufactured sugars and snacky type foods. I'll make my own, and I'll eat them from someone who makes them with whole grains, plant-based, no refined sugars. But is it worth living like that? Jamie Morgan would say absolutely. 15 years later, she's down 250 pounds. 4 years later, I am no longer a slave to the foods around me. And so what does that have to do with generations, freedom, gratitude, blessing our country, because the more of us that can get on top of what isn't working in our life, the more that we take control of what's going on in our country as it relates to the, I'm going to say, environmental devastation of certain practices that we have, the more that we can take control of those things, the more freedom that we have from just following what everybody else is doing and what media tells us to, the more we can leave to our generations ahead of us, which is the imperative that was left to us by our generations before us. As Adele, Deborah Adele said, she is standing on the shoulders of the love of those people that sacrificed their lives to come here and give a better life to their children. We owe the same thing. We owe it in every way. We owe it by staying healthy, by staying strong, by not bankrupting our medical system, regardless of whether or not our government will allow us to, because we're so socked in with bad choices, bad food choices, bad medical choices, and bad social decisions, because the money is in the manufacture of things that can be made cheaply, easily, and get us hooked. That's the old tobacco model. So that's all I have to say. Freedom to me is to play it forward to the generations. Freedom to me is taking care physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, to make a difference with those around me and to get the word out whenever I can. And this happened to be what I was inspired to do. So if you're still if you're still with me, if you're still listening, if you still care, thank you very much. I appreciate you. Again, Nan Simonson, Aging Powerfully. You can subscribe to my Facebook group. I have go to my website, nansimonson.com, and you can easily then get to my cooking show, because I not only have my blog posts, but I also have I think I'm up to 140 or 150 whole food, plant-based, delicious ways to eat and stay healthy and play it forward. Have a great day, because I know I'm going to. Happy 4th of July. God bless this country, and have a great day. Bye-bye.